Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on a couple of European nightcrawler worm bins where it's starting to look like we've got ourselves a little bit of a flying insect infestation. It looks even worse now that I've started removing some of the stuff that they're hiding underneath here. Beneath these couple sheets of cardboard I could see a whole bunch of flying insects, and these aren't just single individual flying insects. When you see one of these where it looks like I don't know if I could be able to demonstrate it on the camera, but you can see one moving here in front of my pinky finger. It's bigger than your typical flying insect. Here's another one. They're all over the place, perhaps even more of them, connected up to one another, mating, than individuals to be seen. So these worms have, these flying insects have made themselves quite at home here in our worm bin. So I've prepared myself with the antidote, hopefully. I've not been using the mosquito dunks very much, except here and there when I start spotting flying insects. So before we do anything here, I'm going to pretty generously treat both of these systems, because while it doesn't do anything per se with the actual living insects right now, the flying insects themselves, it's the next generation that it interferes with the development of. So they'll be able to successfully mate, lay eggs, the eggs will hatch and there'll be larvae, but those flying insects will never develop beyond the larval stage, thanks to the mosquito dunks. So let's press on. Now, I did do something last week in here which was a little bit uncharacteristic of me, which was to not monkey around and till up everything. In fact, all we did was we did a quick kind of investigatory probe down into the bed just to make sure that they're actually accepting this nice new environment that they were introduced into 44 days ago, but then nothing more. So we pretty much left the entire bedding undisturbed, and even the last time we did a probe down just to make sure that the adoption of the environment was underway and that we confirmed that worms are down in the system, we didn't disrupt this stuff. And I thought maybe we'll just let that ride one more time. There's another worm bin that I checked in on. I don't remember, it was yesterday, I think. It was like the last system that I checked in on where I did a similar thing where I tried to minimize my impact on the system by simply coming in, adding food, and then not tilling all around. So since I noticed we took a similar approach last time here, I figured let's carry on with that same thinking. The food that we gave them last time was bundled into 2 coffee filters, so I just took an empty coffee filter like this and I jammed half the food into one and then the other half of the food into the other, and then created these little bundles. And today I've got a similar setup, but it's not coffee filters. I've got 2 soiled paper towels here for each system, 2 and 2, so those 4 pieces of soiled paper towel is what we're going to deliver this delicious food in. Some yummy cantaloupe melon rinds that I took the time to chop up into nice puny pieces so they can make nice tight little burrito wrapped meal packages for these little guys. Here I see a banana stem, and I don't recall what all was fed last time. I think it was just an assortment of different varied veggies and fruits that we gave them. But over the past 12 days, it seems like they've done some good work on it. Well, here I see what appears to be a little bit of leftover bedding type material. Some of the coffee filter in which we wrapped the food, maybe, or maybe something else. I guess when you put food inside of a piece of paper, the piece of paper just becomes kind of collateral damage as the worms scurry over to consume the yummy foods. The paper products just sort of get in the way and get consumed, which is the exact reason I like doing it that way. So even though there's a couple scraps of leftover bedding here, I smell citrus, so there must be a little bit of citrus left over in here. We saw that banana stem, but certainly not much. Seems like the timing of today's check-in was pretty good, coming in 12 days later. let's see how things look over here. Now, even during the last check-in, any remnants that we could find of that the wool sweater in bin number 1 appeared to have been pretty much gone. We did actually encounter the thread, the one piece of like polyester thread, which interestingly enough I didn't really notice as I plowed through here, and it's the sort of thing you should be able to kind of catch a finger on and pull out easily, but for some reason we managed to evade it. But here it is. I'm pulling it out in a way similar to how I did last time too, and even then it was already pretty much free of any scraps of wool fabric being attached to it, except maybe this little chunk is making me into a fibber. Okay, maybe I wasn't 100% accurate. I thought it was already free of any wool fabric that might have still been adhering to it. And I'm sure there's probably still a few little fragments in here, but over in bin number 2 was where we observed some somewhat larger chunks of the fabric. So here too, I just figured maybe we'd do a little aeration of the contents of this box, which is really only in here for as long as it takes for that wool fabric to finally get broken down, and then we'll get rid of the plastic boxes. But I thought it would be a good way to sort of contain the wool fabric so that it doesn't just get mixed up with the rest of the material throughout the bin. And last time we still encountered pretty good sized chunks of fabric, you know, like pretty good sized chunks. That's a relative term, I guess, in terms of how big is a good sized object. Well, I mean, compared to the fact that half of a sweater got placed into each of these, well, not into these bins per se, but these batches of worms received the wool fabric. Gosh, I don't even remember at this point. I looked at the number earlier on my spreadsheet. For some reason the number 262 comes to mind. I'll correct it on the screen with a accurate number if that's incorrect. But the wool fabric has been underway for quite some time now, and even the last time this piece of thread in bin number 2 appeared to have a lot of good sized chunks still on it, it seems like they're either just coming loose and falling off or have just been eaten. And I'm sure that we'll probably still encounter a couple other larger chunks of wool in here, because 12 days ago there still definitely were pieces of it remaining. So I think it was just based on the presence of leftover wool here in bin number 2 that we concluded that the test does seem to still be underway. But at this point I feel like we're really closing in on the point in time when we're really not going to be able to locate and fish out any more remnants of the wool fabric. I just figured if I could pull out one larger chunk, which was clearly still a fabric fragment, then we can say it for certain because we've actually observed it and witnessed it and handled it. But it feels to me like I'm not really succeeding in that. I guess what complicates it is that there's still fragments of bedding and food and other things mixed in here too, but I'm almost certain that what we've still got in here is a little bit, there's got to still be some wool in here, but perhaps next time we can take a more thorough search to see if we can still locate any, and just base today's check-in on the assumption that we're probably still dealing with a little bit left to be worked down. But something tells me by the next time we come in here, if we start out by suggesting that there's none in there and we can fail to prove ourselves wrong on that hypothesis, then we might end up calling it. But technically you have to admit there was still a few fragments of wool adhering to each of those threads. That alone, enabling us to locate it, was kind of a good thing, because even though we couldn't just find scattered pieces of wool anywhere else, the fact that we still found a few fragments adhering to that synthetic piece of thread, to me, I think means there's probably still at least a few chunks of it floating around in here too. But we really don't have that as a measure anymore. We're not going to be able to find any more chunks adhering to the thread anymore, because it does seem like the thread in both cases, in both systems, has pretty much dropped off any remaining fragments of wool that were still adhering to them. So I think just the continuation, or at least the the declaration, if you will, of the fact that there's still wool in here, or at least making a pretty strong assumption that there probably still some more wool in here. I'm comfortable suggesting that the test should continue, and so it will. And you know, this stuff was part of the old system that the worms came from, and at some point we'll reintegrate it, but I've been really trying so hard to make the focus here, while we're still left with a little bit of wool for the worms to work down. I've been wanting the focus to remain the wool, and that's the reason we haven't really gone deep diving and tilling around and adding lots of bedding. At some point, I think probably at the next check-in, I wouldn't be surprised if we had no luck finding any more fragments, and that next time we could probably write the wool off as completely broken down and come up with some sort of a final figure on how long that took. And maybe then we could start treating these systems more regular, you know, maybe get rid of the plastic boxes, at some point start reintegrating this cardboard that came over with the worms from their old homes. But for now, I just want to go one more round, focusing on the fabric, and I've got a funny feeling by next time it's going to be history. So, what do you think? Do you agree? I don't know. That would be interesting to hear any arguments against that, but who knows? I could be completely wrong. I'm not surprised. I've been wrong before. Let's keep our fingers crossed that this BTI, the mosquito dunks, works too, because I'm getting sick of seeing all these flying insects. So I've got a couple things I got to take care of getting cleaned up and put away, but I'm not going to keep you around for that because that's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.